How can artificial intelligence help your business? A lot of large corporates across the world are grappling with this. Many of them have reached a lot of success and maturity regarding these kind of technologies. A lot of them are struggling for reasons that I will explain during my talk today. But this technology is also very relevant to businesses or organizations of all sizes. Especially with cloud technology, you can utilize artificial intelligence tools on a consumption basis. So even if you're running quite a small firm, there are a lot of opportunities for you to use this technology in the right way. A lot of my background is working with business leaders around their strategy for approaching AI across their business, or I would often be called in for specific domains like human resources or marketing or procurement to help them with their strategy. Most of the meetings that I get with clients are about AI. And most of the meetings start with, we want to use AI in our business. The first question I ask my customers is, to do what? And often, that's when the meeting, right at the outset, becomes a little bit weird. The room full of people will look at each other and frown, waiting for one of the colleagues to answer. And I say, what do you want to do with AI? And often it would be because they've been to a conference, to an event, they read a book, or what happens a lot, and I think this is very dangerous, the team received a mandate from the top to start using AI. And then they want to AI everything without even knowing what it means. And I always try and just dumb it down a bit to make sure, are we talking about the same thing? Because we can so easily throw around terms like artificial intelligence, machine learning, Internet of Things, cloud technology, and the like. I've worked for some consulting firms, and I often joke that if you actually ask the consultant what they just meant with that terminology they used, you will see that they often don't, because we just use these terms without really understanding what it is and how we can use it in a business. One of the benefits I bring, I believe, is the fact that I'm not very technical myself. So I'm dumb enough, if you would, to have to understand the business impact of this technology and help my clients through that. So in the last 8 years or so, every meeting that started with, we want to use AI, I've only done one AI application or implementation rather. Done a lot more, but from those meetings. Because after speaking to the client and the team, I realized that they're trying to fix problems that technology cannot fix. They're trying to fix the culture or the leadership style, or the ability to recruit talent. Now, yes, technology can work with all of those initiatives, but you can't just AI your culture problem. So one of the first things I want to say during my talk is just take a breath and step back a little bit. If you are thinking about AI in your business, as you should, what are the problems you are trying to solve for? I have fixed more business problems with spreadsheets, with Excel, than with AI. Use the tools that you have before you start looking at other tools, especially our big corporates. They've often spent millions of dollars in certain platforms and technologies and tools. First question is it fit for purpose? Are you using it correctly? Have you trained up your people? And so forth. It's quite common sense. Often when I do these talks, I start off by asking the audience, name some things that technology, and especially artificial intelligence, cannot do or cannot automate. And people will say things like consciousness or emotions. Those are correct. There's a number of things that technology can't do that only humans can do. You can't automate a toxic leadership culture or a toxic company culture. You can't automate people who don't understand their jobs, who haven't received the training they should have received, and so forth. But one of the things I love saying, tongue in cheek, is that you cannot automate common sense. And hopefully that's something you'll get out of my talk and out of this event today. Forget about all the things you've read and heard about AI, because it's already formed a certain image in your mind. And it could be an image on the one hand of fear, like I've said earlier, or on the other hand of being over excited about it. Somewhere in the middle, we need to find the right place when it comes to AI in our businesses. There's 3 stories I want to tell before I get into my slide deck. I worked for one of our large banks about 8 or 9 years ago, and at the same time that we did our first proof of concept, with a large consulting firm on artificial intelligence, I also became a father. And for some reason, I immediately connected the two. I've got this little baby boy, and I'm working with the most exciting and powerful technology I've ever seen. What will happen to him and his counterparts and his generation in 20 or 30 or 40 years from now, given where I can see this technology is going? So that is what really drives me in the work that I'm doing, is the future of our children, an ethical and responsible approach to artificial intelligence, which we will talk about a lot today. The second story is my father asked me one day about 2 years ago, what is all this AI stuff that I'm doing? I really struggled to explain it to him. Firstly, explaining AI and related technologies is not easy. I think if you ask 10 people, even in the field of AI, you will most likely get 10 different definitions. And that really troubled me, that I couldn't, without using the lingo we always use, like I've said earlier, ML, IoT, patterns, platforms, algorithms, I couldn't explain it to him. And then I came up with my own little way to explain it to him and to my son and to everyone I meet who are not working in the field. And I often have 4 icons on the screen. The one is of a eye, or the ability to see, and these 4 images will talk to the things we do when we perform work as humans. Typically, we can see, we can read an email, we can read an instruction, a request from a client, and so forth. Then there's a picture that will demonstrate execution. We have the ability as humans to actually do the work, create the quote, send the email back, and so forth. The third icon is about listening and hearing and understanding language, what people are saying. We don't only understand literally what people mean, but we've developed over the years the ability to understand nuances. We can pick up when somebody's frustrated. We can often pick up when somebody seems to be lying, but we understand languages and the intent behind it. And then the fourth picture would be like of a little graduation hat of a student, and it talks about learning. As humans, we keep on learning. We learn through our mistakes, but we learn through new information. And then I use those 4 icons to say, but this is what AI kind of technologies can do, really simplified. It has the ability to see. We call it computer vision. We talk about facial recognition, but we can extract data from documents and from patterns to make decisions and to understand what we are seeing. We then can use the algorithms to actually execute these tasks. Here we speak about the likes of robotic process automation, or these days we speak a lot about intelligent automation, automating certain work, often back office repetitive kind of work. We have the ability, or AI has the ability, like we as humans, to actually understand language. Now, if you use Siri, if you use your Google Home device or Alexa, it understands. It's called natural language understanding. In call centers, this is used a lot. We would often speak, without knowing it, to an AI, and it's not widely adopted yet, but it's very possible that you are speaking to an agent that is non-human, that can pick up the nuances, the frustrations, the sentiments in what you are saying. And then it can autonomously make a decision to escalate it to a human manager, or how to actually execute your request. And then fourthly, like humans, these models, these algorithms have the ability to learn and to keep on learning. And that's where we talk about machine learning and the like. The third story. I was asked by a large hospital group about 2 years ago to help them automate the front desk of their hospitals. And I think they have about 50 or 60 hospitals in our country. And if you've been to a hospital, well, especially here where we live, it's often very repetitive, mundane, paper-based kind of work. If you've been to the hospital or the doctor's rooms a few months ago, you are very likely will have to fill in the same kind of information again that they then have to try and extract from your handwritten document and the like. So it's quite repetitive. And especially if you walk into the hospital with pain or discomfort, you don't necessarily want to go through all that admin again. So it's a very ripe area for automation. So I walked into this boardroom. The leadership of the hospital group was there. They had these 2 big whiteboards drawn full of pictures and mind maps about how they're going to automate these front desks. And at the start of the meeting, I asked them 2 questions. Number 1, firstly, have you actually spoken to these people whose jobs you are intending to automate? And have you actually spent time with them to understand their day-to-day jobs? And they said no. And remember, the execs are often 15 or 16 layers above the people on the ground whose work they're trying to AI or automate. And I said to them, I don't think this initiative will be a success. And I'm going to touch on it during my presentation today. Because you have to take people on the journey with you. If people have an inkling of they might lose their jobs, and the moment we speak about robots or automation or AI, a lot of people, and often rightfully so, fear that they're going to lose their jobs. And then you're going to metaphorically see the people storming the castle gate with pitchforks. If you want your initiative to fail or not to deliver the intended results, if you want change management initiatives to fail, if people think they might lose their jobs, you're already losing out. Now, we live in a real world. We can't kumbaya. We have KPIs and targets. Often we are left with the inevitable decision of what are we going to do with these people? And we have to grapple with that in an ethical way while still running a business successfully. That's a very difficult balancing act. But the second reason, so apart from the fact that you have to take people on the journey with you, is there's knowledge and experience and ways of working in those people's heads, so to speak. And at the level of execs, if you make a decision on what to automate, you will very likely miss out on some key things that can be automated. You might not automate the right things in the right way for the right reasons. I then asked them for permission to sit down with 20 of these administrative people over a coffee, very relaxed. I wanted to just ask them about their day-to-day jobs. What are they doing? What are they struggling with? What are some of their frustrations? There were a lot of things we could use technology for to help them. A lot of them complained about the fact that they had to go to one system, get the data, copy it into a spreadsheet, then export it into this thing. So it's all these systems, all these screens that you can fairly easily automate to make the life easier for people doing these kind of work. But their biggest problem was that the printer was too far away from them. And I often laugh or smile when I tell this story. On average, they told me, with every patient interaction, they had to walk to the printer 3 times. So I was called in as a so-called AI expert, although more than half the time I don't even think I know enough to nearly be called an expert. And my recommendation, amongst other things, to this board was bring the printer closer. And I know it sounds silly, and I want to go back to you can't automate common sense. We ended up improving their productivity with about 320%. With a combination of new technology, robotic process automation, making their lives easier, having to access less systems and so forth, of course that was part of it. But just the walking to the printer, because we brought the printer closer, also helped. So as a business leader, when you think about this technology, what is your bring the printer closer story? What are the common sense things you can do that doesn't need AI or even digital technology to make the life of your people who work for you easier and better? And that's why I like that TV program Undercover Boss. And it's often a challenge for execs. They're busy, there's board meetings, they work at a level that's difficult to understand. But it's often difficult for them to understand the day-to-day work that people are performing on the ground and to see how we can use these AI or automation initiatives to make a real impact on our workforce. Now I'm going to go into my slides, but I wanted to set the scene with that. Remember, it's not as powerful as we think it is, AI technology. We can be overly optimistic about it and think it can solve all our problems, or we can be so pessimistic that we don't even want to touch it. Remember to take people on the journey with you, and remember to utilize and listen to your people to understand what they are struggling with on a day-to-day basis. So I'm going to, in the time that I've left, quickly just cover this agenda. Is it our final invention? Is AI the last thing we will ever create? And will it destroy us? Great way to start a talk, but I won't depress you. We'll talk a bit about some practical applications in the business world. I want to talk about that common sense lens on your business strategy when you bring in this technology into your business. And then I'm just going to end off with this topic of how do we as humans work effectively with our digital counterparts. I often see in some of the clients I work with that they will bring in more digital twins, digital assistants, robots and the like to work alongside a team. But what we normally do is when we bring in a new human, we will introduce him or her to the team, we'll get to know them and so forth. When we bring in a digital counterpart, there's almost never some sort of change management, some sort of introduction. And what happens is people start fearing this technology, but we will get to that shortly. Here's a great book, and there are many books on this topic. Is AI our final invention? And again, as you look at this presentation, as you think about and find books, remember about this balance, because some books and some talks will be overly optimistic. It'll change the world for the good, and we're going to talk about that in our panel discussion a little bit later. Will it cause a utopian world? And it has the potential, this technology, to cause a very utopian world. Or will it cause us to live in a very dystopian world, almost an Orwellian world? I love George Orwell, 1984, and the more I read his book once a year, and even though he wrote about the Soviet era, the more I read his book, and the more I get to know about AI, the more I see the similarities. Is Big Brother watching us? You know, or do we have the thought police? I think we already have through our social media interactions and the like. But is this our last invention? A lot of indications are. Now, if we say AI, we're talking about a very wide term actually, a very misunderstood term. I think a better way of talking about it is non-human intelligence, or just smart technology. But the whole idea of intelligence, I think, is what makes people confused about it. Because remember, these algorithms, though it's becoming exponentially more powerful, are not like we as humans. They mimic us. We will get to some sort of a line in the short history before us, I guess in the next few years, where AI might overtake our ability as humans to be intelligent. And that will be quite an ethical and a philosophical thing to grapple with. I think AI, in the broadest sense of the word, or smart technology, is our last invention. All other inventions that we will make as humans, technological inventions, will be based on this technology. Technology that can see patterns, that can make decisions, that can think to some extent. The other question to ask, and I love this topic, it's quite philosophical though, is what about consciousness? You might remember a few months ago that Google engineer who worked on that large language model platform said that it seemed that the platform was sentient, that the responses it gave him was like a human would, with consciousness. Now, even today, we don't really understand human consciousness. How does it develop? How did it develop in our evolutionary history and the like? What if AI develops a fight or flight awareness, like we have because of our consciousness? It's more than just the fight or flight of animals. It's a real human survival instinct. What if, and if you've seen Little Britain, that skid where they type on the computer and the computer says no. So what if AI starts disobeying us? What if we get to a place in time where AI makes decisions that is against human well-being, whether we've programmed it like that or not? And that's why this conversation that we'll have today, especially around the ethics and the future of AI, is so important. Because if we don't regulate it, if we don't control it, if it is just out of hand, there will most likely be a lot of problems in the future. Not for us, for our children, for their children. So is it our last invention? Yes. Like all human tools ever created, the tool itself is neutral. We as humans decide to use it for good or for bad. But in an age of generative AI, what if the tool is creating its own tools and we no longer control the creation of the human tool? We will no longer be able to control whether that tool is used for good or for bad. Now, if you've read a bit, if you watch the news, if you watch some of events like this as a business leader, you already know quite a bit, I would hope, about AI, about some of the use cases. You know, when it comes to automation, if you think of any back office related, repetitive, administrative work, which forms a big part of any business, that kind of work is very automatable. Let me give you an example. So you might receive an email from a client saying, or requesting a quote. And what you typically would do with a human team is, firstly, is this a real client? Is it a client in good standing? In other words, can we actually sell to them, or do they owe us money? Then we would go look at, do we actually have stock? Or do we have a stock holding in our suppliers database, for instance? And what would be the time for delivery? It would be 5 days, for instance. We would we would quickly look at the agreements around, penalties and discounts and the like, and payment terms. And based on that, all of that data, we will create a quote, send it through, and then the client will hopefully accept the quote, and then we need to actually action this and invoice, etc. Now, that's a very simplified way of saying that. But everything I've just said is already highly automatable. Remember, the computer can see, it can extract information, so it can extract the request, understand the language and the intent of the client, automatically ping the database to see if we have stock and if we don't have stock, and if you have that kind of agreement with your vendors, to see if your vendors have stock, calculate based on their geographical location the estimated delivery date, ping the system to see whether there are penalties and discounts and the like involved, what the payment terms are, come up with a price, estimated delivery date, send it back. All of that can easily happen without human involvement. That's just one case study. The whole procure-to-pay area is highly automatable. But even the world of HR, when it comes to how we recruit, how we look at resumes or CVs, how we conduct interviews, how we onboard people, and that whole employee life cycle is very automatable already. And the balancing act there, of course, is you're dealing with people. So can we at least then get to a point as HR people, for instance, to be set free from this administrative burden in order to spend more face time, quality time as humans with other humans. Because there are things, nuances that we will pick up when we sit and have a coffee with a colleague that AI will not pick up, even though we have a lot of data often on the people who work for us. Somebody might be going through a divorce. They might have heard a day or two ago that they or their child have cancer. They might be very insecure about their job, and they might feel they're losing control, they're not trained enough, and so forth. Humans need to discover that from humans. And the ethos for me behind automation in this technology is, let's set people free from the kind of work that we never should have been doing in the first place, because it's taking our humanity away from us. And I'll talk about taking the robot out of the human in one of my last slides. So a lot of use cases for AI in business. Remember, common sense, use the technology you already have. Think about an area in your business that is most ready for AI. So your data quality, the business case behind it, the calculation around return on investment and the like, and start small so that you can fail quickly and fail small. Don't just AI your whole business. It will be a disaster. And again, can you see hopefully the common sense here? You don't need a person like me to tell you these things. But I've seen that we have such stars in front of our eyes when we work with AI that we forget to just think like humans do. The way I explain this technology to clients is through two circles. In the inner circle, you see what I call the smart technology ecosystem. So that's where all this stuff, this exciting AI stuff, ChatGPT, machine learning, sensors, etc., is in this ecosystem. And this ecosystem is becoming closer and closer together, it seems to me. You know, if you think of smart sensors, for instance, or Internet of Things, or edge technology, if you have, whether it's a security system in your office, or whether it is a water meter at a dam, or a weather station, etc., the way we did it in the past is we typically received all these signals, and we had a dashboard, and we as humans had to make decisions. We are now in an era where these sensors actually can interpret the data themselves and send other sensors instructions. Here's an example. If you have a bank branch, or depending on your security policies, is if your facial recognition camera at the front door says that somebody's trying to come in wearing a ski mask or a helmet, which means it might be an intruder or a burglar, that facial recognition platform instructs the door not to open, and it highlights the problem to security. It's not that somebody's sitting there looking at the screen saying, oh, we can't let this person in. You can automate the decisioning around these things. The challenge, however, in my experience when it comes to this technology in business, is that we often focus solely on this inner circle, on the tech. The tech is so exciting. We want to AI stuff. We want to automate everything we can. And the responsibility and the strategy of this technology is outsourced to our technology departments or to our technology vendors. Now, we do need our technologists, we do need our vendors, but the ownership and the responsibility and the strategy cannot sit with your vendor. It cannot sit with your tech department, even though you need them. It should sit at the top level of the business. The problem we have these days is that your so-called C-suite or your execs in especially larger businesses don't understand this technology. Studies globally show that up to 70% of business executives have no clue about what this technology can do, how powerful it can be, how limited it is, we can use it for, and so forth. Now, I'm not advocating that execs should become AI experts, not at all. I'm just saying, as business decision makers, as those who have the responsibility to run those businesses and, in effect, the well-being of your workforce, you should know enough about this technology to understand when your own IT people or your vendors are trying to pull the wool over your eyes. And again, AI everything. The problem with technology consulting firms, and I've worked for a number of them, is, of course, you've got targets, so you want to get into a client, help them with their strategy, implement the technology, and never leave. There's no IP handover, no training of their staff. So I often say that a successful vendor engagement is that when the vendor is done, you don't need them anymore for that engagement. You hopefully will need them for other things. But make sure that when you deal with vendors, and in the case of this technology, you will very likely not have the expertise in-house. You're going to have to work with some external people. Make sure that the engagement is a win-win engagement, but that you contract the handover of IP and the training of your own people. Now, in the outer circle, I will show you a number of things now. The reason, in my experience, why these AI initiatives often fail in business is not because of the tech. The tech is there. The tech can work if we use it correctly. It's because of the softer things. And look at this and think about your own business. Let's start at the top. I often ask my clients who want to start using AI, have you thought about what your business will look like in 5 years from now? Given that there will be a lot more automated decisioning happening, that you will most likely have to get rid of people because of your automation initiatives, that you very likely don't have the in-house skills at the moment. Do you even have people that are what I call upskillable? Can you upskill your people? And what do these new career paths look like? And so forth. So you have to bring in or consult with organizational design specialists. The whole shape of your business might change in time as you start using this technology. Don't just think and have, again, the starry eyes about the AI that it's going to solve everything. It will fundamentally change the way you interact with your clients and with your own staff. We have to think about organizational design. Regulatory compliance, we're going to talk about it a bit again later today. In South Africa, we have POPIA, the Protection of Private Information Act. There are elements of it that talks about how we use algorithms in modeling our clients' behavior and the like. But we have no regulatory framework in this country, or in most countries in the world, sadly, around the ethical and responsible use of AI technologies. We will have the EU's AI Act in the next few months. That'll be interesting. The US and the UK and others are doing interesting work around it. In our country, we are nowhere. A lot of the large clients I deal with are forced now really to build their own regulatory compliance frameworks and their ethical compliance frameworks within their business. The question is not just, can we do this? In other words, can we use all the data that we have on our clients to come up with new products and services and the like? But should we do it? You know, here's an example. Our mobile phone providers cannot access our bank accounts, although a lot of them are becoming stronger in the financial services space. But my bank knows exactly what's happening in my bank account. And the reason is because every time I transact, I receive an SMS or a text message. So theoretically, my mobile phone provider sees the money flowing in and out of my account. But remember now, I have not given them permission to use that information. And I sometimes wonder, and I don't doubt that our local mobile providers are not compliant. I'm quite sure, because it's quite a regulated environment. But the temptation maybe of using that data coming through your SMS or text servers to actually know what's happening in your clients' bank accounts, their spending patterns, and to use that data to upsell or cross-sell products to them. According to privacy, they can only use the data I've given them permission to use, and to use it for the intended purposes. It's maybe not the best example, but we have to think about this. We are actually harvesting so much more data on our own workforce and on our clients, and if we do it smartly and responsibly, it can be to great benefit. But the temptation to use this growing power, this big brother idea of really knowing what's happening in our clients' lives, and to use it for purposes, even if we mean it well, but purposes that equates to us not having permission to use it. That's a problem. So we don't have a regulatory framework in this country. We have to create our own ethical frameworks and train our staff to abide by it as we develop these AI algorithms. I've already mentioned the C-suite involvement. I cannot stress it enough. You cannot just have a mandate from the top about AIing stuff. Because then people are, what's that saying, you've got a hammer and you're looking for a nail. You're going to find things to AI or automate all across the business if your KPI depends on it. And you will alienate people from what this technology can do, because these initiatives will fail often. It'll actually increase people's fear around automation and their jobs and so forth. So the C-suite cannot just mandate. Yes, of course you can mandate we need a cost reduction of 3% over the next financial year. And there are many ways of looking at achieving that. But you can't mandate this technology from the top if you don't understand how it's going to impact the ground level workforce and how it's going to impact your compliance to regulatory frameworks and the like. The next one is reskilling and upskilling. I've been in so many meetings where people said, we're not worried about automation, we're just going to upskill our people or reskill our people. It's such an easy thing to say. But again, remember where I started at the top, organizational design? If you start using this technology, what kind of workers will you need in the next few years? Do they even exist in your organization? Can you upskill your current workforce? You know, a lot of people are happy. They might have 5 or 10 years before retirement. They want to come in at 8, do their reports, leave at 4 or 5. They don't necessarily want to be upskilled. They don't want a new career. They're very good at what they're doing. But what are you going to do when you don't need them because the robots can do a better job? Again, there's that balance between running a business effectively and being a responsible business toward your people and your clients at the same time. Future skills. Can you anticipate what kind of skills you will need in the future? How will you, especially if you're a big corporate, and I often forget what generation we're dealing with at the moment. I think somebody said Alpha the other day, X and Z, I've already lost count. But I don't know how we're going to get today's young people coming out of high school, out of university, to want to work for big corporates. It seems to be a problem for a lot of the clients I'm dealing with. They can put in bean bags, make it like a Google office, make it very exciting. It doesn't seem that youngsters want to work for these big corporates anymore. So what do we do with this generational problem, this technological challenge, and the future workforce? Given that we might not be able to upskill all our people, we might have to bring in new blood, so to speak. And then last one, and there's a lot more that I can put here, is again change management. Change management is not about stickers in the bathrooms, posters on the sides of the walkway and the like, although those things play a role. But how do we, back to my bring the printer closer example, understand people's jobs, help them to see this technology in a positive way, because we've started small through a proof of concept or the like. They can actually see the results of it's making their lives better. And that's, I think, change management. Change management for me, and it's different in the virtual world, but it's those water cooler conversations. It's somebody telling a colleague, I don't have to do that report 10 o'clock on a Sunday for an 8 o'clock Monday meeting anymore. The AI or the robot's doing it. I may be just quickly overseeing it. or whatever the example is. That's how we do it. Again, that's why it can't be top down. It can't be the organizational wide. You have to start small. So just before I move on to my last slide, so think about this picture. Yes, of course, focus on the ecosystem. Look at the right technologies, whether you have it already, whether you need to bring in new platforms, but think about the outer circle and the many more that I haven't even listed here. The importance of people, the importance of doing this responsibly, taking people on the journey with you. You can see how it's coming back to people. Remember where I started? There's stuff that AI can't do that people can do. Common sense. Focus on the importance of people while still aiming effectiveness and efficiencies in your business through this technology. Here's what I call my take the robot out of the human slide. And with this I'm going to end. This is a slide I did for a banking client a year or two ago. They were asking about their corporate banking members or staff members that deal with these large accounts. How can they use automation technology to make their lives better? And I worked for a consulting firm, and we had all of them in the office. And you know, some of these bankers have been doing it for 30 or 40 years, and they were sitting there, arms crossed, leaning back, thinking, what are these consulting guys going to tell us now? And I started the event with this slide, and it's very simplified, but think about your own job, think about the people who work for you. If you divide your job function into 3 areas, like in this triangle, the bottom represents your very mundane, repetitive tasks. The middle, your more digital interactions, the technology you use and the like. But the top of the pyramid is what only humans can do. And what we asked these bankers, what is your ideal kind of day-to-day job? And they all said more time face-to-face with clients, but empowered with patterns and predictive analytics and technology to become more of a trusted advisor. And then we looked at the things that's taking up their time, and that was a lot of admin, a lot of reporting, a lot of arranging meetings, planning, travel, and the like. If you automate most of those things, then you are set free to do what you want to do, which is more face time with your clients. Think about your own job. If you think of a pie chart even, what is taking up your day typically, and what would an ideal picture look like? And how can you reach that middle ground through technology? If you do repetitive administrative kind of work, and all jobs have that to one extent or another, then you are already a robot. We don't have to fear the robots because we are robots. So take the robot out of the human by setting them free through the use of technology to do things that only humans can do. Intuition, problem solving, empathy. And again, I'm not saying we're going to kumbaya the whole business. People have jobs. We do need administrative functions and the like and reporting. But think about that inner circle and outer circle I just showed you, and think about this triangle. How do we set people free to move up this pyramid so that we can get the best out of the humans that work for us? And with that, I'm going to conclude. We have a few exciting sessions coming up following my discussion and the panel discussion. So we'll see you in a few seconds.